The ugly truth is information economy and what I call the eyeball economy. If you think about everything on the internet that's free, like if you think about your free services, the free email and the free news and all of those things, I don't know if you've heard the old axiom, if whatever it is you're doing is free, then you're the product, right? The cost is your eyeballs and your data. People don't necessarily want you to be secure because the way all of this stuff is paid for is by targeting you as the consumer. Individuals think, why should I bother? I'm too small. Who cares about me? I just have my little phone, or I don't run a business, or I have my little laptop. I'm too small for anyone to care about me. I will say, so out of 2023, the second largest crime type in terms of victim complaints to the IC3 were personal data breaches. 55,851 complaints are people who suffered a personal data breach, which means their laptop got hacked, their phone got hacked. So the top complaint or the top loss by crime type for 2023 was investment fraud, $4.5 billion in actual loss. So huge. And then after that was business email compromise at $2.9 billion, which essentially business email compromise sounds like a weird thing. It's essentially an intercept of a wire transfer on some side, either on a personal side or a business side.
Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to FI. I'm Bill Yount with my co-host, Jackie Cummins-Koski. She's our new co-host. Becky stepped back, and Jackie has kindly joined us, and we're very excited about the future with Jackie. How are you doing today, Jackie?
I'm doing good, Bill. We just got back from EconoMe, the money party, and I'm feeling pretty good, pretty pumped. We got to meet a lot of great people, and we'll bring some of them on the podcast, and we got to connect so many things about community. So I'm thrilled, and I'm really excited about our guest today.
Yeah, our guest is Donna Peterson. She is, I first met her through a FinTalks meetup, and that was organized by Amberly Grant. And we just knew we had to have her on the show. And I'm a little bit intimidated because she's a retired supervisory special agent for the FBI. She spent 21 years focused on transnational cybercrime, online fraud, attacks on the U.S. financial infrastructure, and national security matters. I've never talked to an FBI agent, actually. Donna also served as the FBI detailee to the U.S. Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, where she worked on cybersecurity policy. Her last assignment with the FBI was supervising the criminal cyber squad responsible for investigating computer intrusions, insider threats, ransomware, and business email compromises in the San Francisco Bay Area. Prior to joining the FBI, Donna was a Russian cryptologic linguist. Oh my goodness, with the U.S. Air Force. Donna holds a master's degree in cybersecurity policy from the University of Maryland and was a certified cyber instructor for the FBI. Now, since retiring from the FBI in 2020, congratulations, because she is a member of the FI movement too. And as an FBI agent, I think she has a lot to offer us. Now, she's always been a finance nerd and has been helping other federal retirees navigate their unique post-retirement benefits and tax optimization strategies, in between indulging her twin loves of travel and photography. And Donna just got back from India. How are you doing, Donna?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yep. And topics for today's conversation are things like how to secure yourself against the most common hacks and vulnerabilities. And I've been compromised. I've had my ID stolen, so I'm ready to hear all of this. How do you increase your privacy on your devices and online? And then business email compromise and email account compromise. And how improving your cybersecurity can help with estate planning and travel. Who would think? Okay, Donna, take it away.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you so much for having me. This is right? Finance and cybersecurity are two topics that are near and dear to my heart. And anytime I can get the two to intersect, I'm happy to do so. There are so many times in the FI community when I have conversations with people, and there's a little bit about it that makes me cringe because I know all of us are very good with money. And we're really conscientious about what we spend and how we spend our money and things like this. And one of the things that comes out whenever I do one of Amberly's FinTalks example, when people look at, for example, their phone plan or whatever, everyone is really, really keyed in on value, on the features of their phone plan and how much it costs and this and that. But nobody ever talks about security as a feature worth paying for. And to me, I feel like if we could make that part of the conversation, so you keep your finances secure, so you keep your privacy a little bit more secure. And to your point, Bill, so maybe your identity isn't compromised. I feel like that could only keep you more financially secure as you move along your path to financial independence. Like, I'm very concerned that people choose good products, they choose good businesses to work with, and they end up keeping their money. And if you can keep somebody from becoming a victim of a financial scam or being defrauded of some of their money, then I feel like that's a good thing.
Well, you talk about, I use AT&T, and people in the community talk about, oh yeah, the cheapest plan, and Mint Mobile comes up over and over again. And you recommend a particular company that may not be cheap, but they're much more secure because we use two-factor authentication, and people can hack your cell phone number. And I've seen that happen where they can get into accounts by having your numbers, those authentication numbers, texted to them.
Right. Right. So there's a huge crime problem called SIM swapping. So the SIM is the little electronic piece of your phone that keeps your not only your phone number information, but your carrier information on it. And if you think about it too, if you think about how much of your phone now is used for your security, when we talk about two-factor authentication, when you log into a website and you put in your username and your password, and then that website sends you your second factor, your little 6-digit number, it actually texts it to your phone number. And then you have to wait, and for you to actually get into your banking website or whatever website you're in, you need that little 6-digit PIN. But the way they're getting it to you is through your phone number. And your phone number is contained on your SIM. Like everything, because if you think about it, when you go buy a new phone after 1 or 2 years, or in the FI community every 4 or 5 years, because we're all FI and we don't upgrade our phones that often, and you take your phone number with you, that's part of your SIM information. And what you don't want is for your actual phone carrier to be subject to SIM swapping. You don't want somebody to be able to call your carrier, AT&T or Mint or Verizon or whatever, and be able to talk them out of giving them, the bad guy, your phone number, because that is a piece of your personal and financial security, because that's where your second factor of authentication comes in.
So I have a question, Donna. So the SIM card would usually be switched out when you're going to another country, correct? So now they have the eSIM cards, right? Where you can just have an app on your phone. So would that be better?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, then you're not dealing with your super little tiny SIM card.
Right.
Well, your physical SIM card that you might lose, that you might have to keep all of your data on. Yes, and eSIM is much more secure.
Okay, great.
It's just easier to keep track of when you're, yes. Okay. And I would say most good phone companies are going towards an eSIM for using overseas. But I will say one of the problems with switching to an eSIM overseas is then your phone switches and it thinks it's that eSIM. So if you're trying to log into your bank overseas, you still need to turn that off. You need to be on a wireless network or something so you can get your second factor authentication.
A second thing, when I was in Thailand, I don't know why I was trying to do this, but I was trying to get into Credit Karma, and Credit Karma didn't even recognize it overseas, and it wouldn't let me on.
Yeah.
So just even Credit Karma is saying, hey, something's weird going on. We're not going to let you sign on.
Right.
So, okay, that's cool.
that sounds like a default security measure is denial. Yes.
Well, which isn't a bad thing. I don't mind being denied because that means you're more secure with credit card companies and other things too. You recommend a particular company actually, and we have no affiliates with these things, but and it's more expensive, but you recommend it because of its security measures. Which company is that?
Right. Well, so I tell people too, and again, it's up to you to do your own due diligence and do the things that you're comfortable with. But I use Verizon, and I've used them for a lot of years, and it's because their back-end security, I mean, Verizon is a company. They have certain security measures in place and certain locks in place that make it a lot harder to conduct a SIM swapping attack within Verizon. And one of the things I tell people when I give cybersecurity talks too is one of the ways to do your own due diligence. Again, because here's the thing, I don't know the universe of offerings out there. I do my own research when I look for a company like the bank that I'm going to bank with and the phone company that I'm going to use. But this is what I tell people. What you should do when you're about to use a new financial institution, a new product, a new service, something that you haven't heard about, is take a few minutes and do a search of that company, product, or service and these things: data breaches, lawsuits, privacy violations, enforcement actions, FCC rulings, FTC rulings. And I also tell people in the country of origin, because I do suggest that people use U.S. companies that are based in the United States. And I say that just because if something happens, you have recourse based on U.S. laws and U.S. privacy rights and consumer rights, things that you're used to. And I say that if we talk about VPNs or virtual private networks a little bit later, we can talk about some of those also. If your privacy or if your data is breached by a virtual private network that you decided to download that was free, and then you realize that it's right, that the network was built and is operated from a foreign country, you have absolutely no recourse, right, from the things that have happened and the data that you've lost type things. Whereas with a U.S. company, you have a little bit of recourse there. But what I say is use those things that I just listed, like Google whatever it is that you think you want to use, and you will find very quickly which companies have suffered data breaches and data thefts and SIM swapping attacks over and over and over and over again. And the other thing I will tell people too, if you find a particular phone company, and if you do these things, I think you will, they haven't gotten better. They've suffered attacks year after year after year after year, and they still haven't put enough money or the money that they should put into security to stop these things from happening, to protect their customers. But it's one of the reasons, and you're absolutely right, Verizon is not the cheapest, but it's who I use.
So Donna, so you recommend Verizon and that's what you use. So Verizon has like a lower cost option called Visible. Mm-hmm. Would that be as secure as Verizon? Like, would we be okay using that? Or is it different than Verizon from a security perspective?
See, I don't know, actually, because I don't know what the difference is from Verizon's standpoint, what the offering is for Visible. Okay. I don't know what but if it runs on Verizon's backbone, I mean, I can't imagine that they would build a less secure.
Because I was this close to switching
backbone to run their lower cost option.
Right, I was this close to switching.
I don't know, but it's worth it. Somebody has mentioned that to me before, and it's worth it for me to look up. But I would guess, especially for things that really matter to you. And one of the things I tell people too is to think about your phone number like your online social security number. Because it is used for security, it is that important to you. It is not something to me to skimp on. You want your phone number and you want your phone carrier to be as secure as possible. That would be my recommendation.
Let's take a step back for a minute, because we've gone into phones, but we need to understand, I think, the scope of this problem. It's a huge problem. And you're aware of the numbers of both victims and dollars involved. Let's tell our audience just how big it is.
Yeah, it's huge. So I think your guest, Paula Pant, I think you talked about this in your episode a little bit, but the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center is a really, really good place to look at this. So private citizens, businesses, everyone can file a complaint with the IC3. And the IC3 collects all of this, and they put out an annual report every year to talk about sort of the scope of cybercrime. This is where you can get all of the FBI reporting on just how bad these problems are. And I will say, and because it's early 2024, they've just compiled and published their report for 2023. So I will tell you that they had, just to give you an example, and I will say too, there are a lot of people who say, whenever I go out and give a talk on cybersecurity, individuals think, why should I bother? I'm too small. Who cares about me? I just have my little phone, or I don't run a business, or I have my little laptop. I'm too small for anyone to care about me. I will say, so out of 2023, the second largest crime type in terms of victim complaints to the IC3 were personal data breaches. 55,851 complaints, or people who suffered a personal data breach, which means their laptop got hacked, their phone got hacked. Something, to your point, Bill, they got identity theft. And the number one complaint was phishing or spoofing, which means somebody tried to reach them, right, through a malicious text, a malicious email, a malicious phone call. And that was 298,000 complaints. And remember, too, this is the IC3 and this is the FBI. So this is just the scope of the problem in the United States. These are U.S. citizens who are complaining about this. So,
what kind of dollars are involved, though? Because it was unbelievable to me how much people are scammed out of because of this security issue.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The number of complaints versus the actual losses are a little bit different. So the number one loss to me, which is also really, really interesting for the FI community, is investment fraud, where people are like, hey, invest in my cryptocurrency plan, or this investment fraud, or this wealth management, which sounds too good to be true, which most likely is. So the top complaint or the top loss by crime type for 2023 was investment fraud, $4.5 billion in actual loss. So huge. And then after that was business email compromise at $2.9 billion, which essentially business email compromise sounds like a weird thing. It's essentially an intercept of a wire transfer on some side, either on a personal side or a business side. For example, let's say you're transferring money, you're sending a wire transfer to close, you're sending a wire transfer for a down payment on a house, right? And it gets intercepted by a scammer. And I think that's a business email compromise or email account compromise, $2.9 billion in actual losses there. It's incredible. Huge.
And then we just had to, for our trip to Morocco, we were required to wire money to a company where, in order to pay the deposit on our trip, and we had used a Moroccan company. And I started thinking about this, and I was like, okay, how do we determine that this isn't a scam? They have a website. It seems robust. We've talked to them in person. And the things that you have to do to try and avoid sending your money to a scammer, what do you have to do? And I had this also with regards to investing in a syndication, where you're trusting someone that this is the right bank account and my $50,000 is going to land where it's supposed to.
It's tough. It's nerve-wracking, isn't it? I did the same thing when I transferred money for my India trip to my Australian travel outfitter.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do is I call the company and I talk to the principal that's on the email, and they'll send you their wire transfer information, and I call to confirm it. Shouldn't everybody do that?
You should, but how do you know if you're dealing with somebody only over email that you're not dealing with a scammer? If you're only going back and forth for email, did you check their main website to see if the information matched?
Yes, definitely. He was the owner of the company, and you have to build trust. And when I was getting ready to click the button, I was like, okay, I hope this is right.
Yes. And of course, it always helps to have travel insurance, right?
Yes.
And
we did talk about that too. And does travel insurance cover you for these wire frauds? Because I didn't know that was the case.
I think it totally depends. It depends on the terms of your insurance.
Okay.
And what it might be, right? And you're right. Some of those are very sticky. I think, have you seen, I've sort of been watching this whole, did you see the company that just sort of went under that sold their around the world cruises, where people have lost $50,000 and $60,000 that they've put down as down payments, and now they're trying to get it back.
Oh my goodness.
That's incredible.
It's very interesting.
Okay, so we need to go through for our audience, and we've sort of touched on some of these things, but how do attacks happen? I mean, I seem to get emails and texts every day that seem to be scammy. So, what are the main topics where we need to be focused on as to how these attacks happen? And you have a list, I think it includes things like internet access, web browsing, social media. We talked about the phone. We'll go through email and then these data breaches. Can you take us through these topics?
Sure. I'd say really quick, there's some main things that you can do to keep yourself safe, and it's a combination of both technical things and behavioral things that you can do to keep yourself safe. For example, like internet access. I don't use public or unsecured wireless networks. But if you do, if you're going to log into a wireless network at a hotel or a coffee shop or something like that, I always make sure that your browser is secured. That is a technical thing that you can do. You can go into your browser security preferences and make sure that your HTTPS is enabled, so your browser is only sending information that's encrypted. You can use a VPN to make sure that no matter what network you're using, the information from your browser, anything that you're sending on the internet will be encrypted, so the network can't read it. That's a technical way to keep yourself safe. And I would say I use a very easy Cloudflare VPN. It's easy. You can download it off any app store, turn it on, and forget it, and it's easy enough. But I also use the Firefox browser, which is automatically enabled for security. So with those two things, and then I don't really worry about it, right? Or about logging onto wireless networks or not. But it's because I know that my data is already encrypted, no matter what I'm doing on my, and what I'm talking about right now is for my phone. And I use another VPN for my laptop when I'm out doing something like that. So I always know, I make sure that my data is encrypted anytime, no matter what kind of network I'm on.
Yeah, I downloaded Cloudflare. And it's really easy. You just turn it on or you turn it off. And I had never used a VPN. Can you tell folks what that is and why it's so important?
We are super excited for one of our new partners. It's called Create Your Own Financial Plan. And this is a comprehensive video course by our friend Cody Garrett. He's with Measure Twice Money, and he's been on our podcast, and we love this course that he has put out. So if you are a true do-it-yourselfer and you've been wanting to put together a financial plan, check him out. I've gone through the course myself, and I have nothing but praise for it and the quality of work that Cody Garrett does. Cody Garrett is a CFP, so you're getting the mind and the experience of a CFP that you can trust. You just need to go to measuretwicemoney.com/catching up, and you will get $100 off this course. And again, that is Measure Twice Money Catching Up.
Sure. A VPN, it's a virtual private network that sort of masks where you're coming from on the internet. It gives you a little bit more privacy, and it gives all of the, if you think of the, I don't know, if you think of the internet, remember how they used to call it an information highway? It gives all the other people on your information highway a little less information about who you are and where you're going and what you're doing and where you're coming from. It's a little bit easier answer. It helps you with security and privacy. It just doesn't give you as much information. Like, for example, sometimes you get a lot of location-based ads. The ad tries to guess where you're coming from and give you ads based on where it thinks you're from. Every time I use my Cloudflare VPN, I get ads for either Salt Lake City or Dallas or occasionally Minneapolis because that's right, because the Cloudflare VPN is telling the internet that that's where I'm coming from. Even though obviously I'm in Colorado, so I'm not coming from any of those places. But that's totally fine because my data is being obscured. So it's a little bit more private, a little bit more secure for you.
You said you use a different one for your laptop, and I ended up using what you recommended on FinTalks, but I can't remember the name of it right now.
It's PIA, Private Internet Access.
Okay.
Actually, so yeah, I find it very easy to use. And I want to say, I think it's like $30 a year or something like that, or $80 for 3 years. Yeah, very easy to turn on and off.
These are things that I did not do, and maybe that's how my ID ended up being stolen, because I only started doing these things when you mentioned them on the FinTalks talk. I do feel a lot more secure to know that people don't know where I'm coming from, people aren't getting my information as well. And why is it that we aren't educated on things like these when we're young and getting our internet identity started? I mean, we talk about financial literacy is not a thing. It's not taught in schools. We're not taught this stuff either. I mean, I'm in my 50s and I didn't know about it.
Right. Well, I mean, the ugly truth is information economy and what I call the eyeball economy. If you think about everything on the internet that's free, like if you think about your free services, the free email and the free news and all of those things, I don't know if you've heard the old axiom, if whatever it is you're doing is free, then you're the product. right? The cost is your eyeballs and your data. People don't necessarily want you to be secure because the way all of this stuff is paid for is by targeting you as the consumer and buying and selling the information about you. What you do, what ads you respond to, what you buy, what you sell, what ads you respond to, the things that you buy, the news articles that you read, where your eyeballs sit online, kind of thing. The more of that you shut off, the less money companies make off of your browsing activity. The information economy that's out there right now, the reason that we expect most things on the internet to be free is that this sort of back-end information is what's running it. So I think that's why we're not taught to keep it as quiet and as private as it should be.
Should it be taught in school?
I mean, it should be. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Donna, I was going to also mention, even along with financial education, financial literacy classes, a part of the curriculum is about financial security that will sort of cover some of this. So I feel like it should almost be a part of all of your other smart financial moves is the security aspects.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it should go hand in hand.
I agree. I think so too. Because cybersecurity will actually feed into your financial security. I mean, when your identity is stolen, that's huge.
Well, that's forever.
Right? Because
your information is out there on the dark web. There's something called deep fakes that they can do. And I think we talked about with Paula Pant, but with AI, it's only getting worse. There's voice identification or voice prints that you use, but they can fake your voice print. They can fake your face ID on your phone. None of this, it's really scary when you dig into it at how unsecure you really are. And you have to do as much as you can to avoid these things because the cyber criminals are so sophisticated.
Right. But if you think about it too, even all of your government benefits too, right? Like they're not going to issue you a new birth date or a new social security number. It's not going to happen. You need those things to ID you for social security benefits, for your taxes, all of these things that are sort of never ending, right? Your medical records, all of those. These are important numbers that don't change. And once they're compromised, it's really, really tough. And like you said, it's forever. Yeah. So protecting yourself is important.
And one thing you can do, I learned with regards to filing your taxes so people don't scam you out of your refund. There's a particular number. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how you can protect your income tax return so your refund actually lands in your own checking account?
Oh, that's right. Don't they offer a PIN lock number of some sort that you can use year over year? I actually file my own taxes and I use TurboTax, but you're right, they have their own sort of little PIN lock number that I have to use to unlock my account every year.
Yeah,
right. But I think, like I said,
does the IRS have something?
Yeah,
the IRS will allow you to set up a PIN number.
And you have to use a different one every year. You can't, it's not just the same one. It ends up rolling over to a new one. So that's how I have to file my taxes now. And if you got a big refund.
Oh, and I think I have a little tip. So Donna, you give me a pat on the back if you think this is a good tip. So you have your Social Security earnings statements. And as younger people, we know that our benefits might be a little bit off, but would it help to make sure we're checking every year our earnings record and make sure it matches up? Because if that's off, that could be one of the early signs of identity theft where somebody else is using your Social Security number. It could be someone that's not legal or able to work in this country and they did a Social Security number. So is that helpful?
I would do it anyway, just for accuracy, because it's a lot easier to check your Social Security earnings record every year where the information is still fresh versus 20 years later when you're about to retire and you're like, how much did I make? How much did I make in 1998?
And easy to correct it as well if something's wrong or screwed up. But so I do it for that reason too, because I'm like, if it's way off, it could be a mistake or there could be something really wrong.
Right. Exactly.
And we need to do that also with our credit reports, because I was recently hacked where somebody actually got into my bank account and transferred money. This is different than credit card fraud where you're protected and the company is quick to make you whole. But somebody actually accessed my Chase bank account and transferred out a couple $1,000s. And if you're not monitoring your expenses, if you're not monitoring your credit report, because they also applied for credit under my ID. I mean, it's really scary what happens when it's all gone and people access these things. I mean, how do you protect yourself against this? It just doesn't seem like it's adequate to me. And it's really scary to try and get whole with money that's directly transferred out of your account. It's harder to get back and it takes a lot longer. It's just not like credit cards.
So did your bank use two-factor authentication? Like how were they able to access your account?
I don't know. And I mean, it also happened, I recognized that they got into my Fidelity account. They managed to get past a lot of the security, but they stopped them at a certain point. And that's when they don't offer you the highest level of security right out of the bat. Fidelity said, okay, we need to go to an authenticator app. Can you tell us about what authenticator apps are as opposed to two-factor ID and how those benefit us? And is it even better than two-factor authentication?
Oh, gotcha. Two-factor authentication is essentially, it's the concept. Once you put in your username and password, two-factor authentication is what is the second factor. So whether somebody texts you a 6-digit PIN that you then have to put in, that's the second factor, or you get that 6-digit PIN from an authenticator app, it's still the second factor. So whether you get texted your second factor or you get it from your authenticator app, that's still two-factor authentication. But I think what you're asking, Bill, you're right, an authenticator app, or some people, like if you're a federal worker or you work in a high security field, will actually get a physical token, like an RSA token. I used to have on my keychain that actually had 6 digits that would go.
So did I.
Right, that would. Yes, exactly. That would run through it and change every single minute. And you had to look at your token and put in your 6 digits. And you're right. And the token and the app, which I think is your question, Bill, are actually more secure than getting an SMS text, even though it's the same 6-digit two-factor authentication, because the app is more secure than actually getting an SMS text. And to your point, Bill,
So
because
Donna,
your phone is a little more easily compromised. Yes.
So Donna, are these two-factor authentications, is that pretty much replacing the challenge or security questions we used to get asked?
I think it depends on the bank and if they use them or not, right? Because occasionally, like the bank I have will send the 6-digit PIN, and then for some reason, if they don't like where I'm coming from, or if I'm traveling, right, and maybe my IP address is not something they expect to see, they'll give me a challenge question also, right, that I set up 6 months ago.
Would we call that 3-factor authentication?
Yeah, exactly, right? Excess factor authentication.
And
there you go.
These things, much like 401k contributions, aren't default. You have to go in and opt into these things. And maybe that's because not everybody has smartphones, but it's something you have to dig into and actually start.
So actually, no, I would say one of the things that I look for, that I tell people to look for in a quality company that you do business with, this should not be optional. If you're doing business with a company that lets you use security or not, I wouldn't use that company. I would use a company that forces you to use two-factor authentication at a minimum. Because to me, that means that they've instituted better security. One of the things, I used to do a lot of public speaking. One of my jobs in the FBI was to go out and speak to the banking and finance industry. And a lot of the pushback I got from their security was that their older, wealthier clients did not like security because it causes friction. That's the industry term for it. It slows you down, because you have to wait for the 6-digit PIN. Or even, right, like I actually use a bank that won't send it to you via text. It sends it to you via email. So you have to have your phone and you have to look at your email and to get your little 6-digit PIN kind of thing. And they call that friction because it's inconvenient and it takes time for you to actually get that number in. And their older clientele don't like it, right? Because it takes time and it's inconvenient and they have to go look at this and they might not have their phone with them, and they don't like it because their wealthier clients don't like it, right? And one of the things I would always argue with them about is saying you could market this as a positive differentiator, saying you do in fact have security. I mean, unfortunately, this is how the industry is developed with these little annoying things, which is why a lot of people are trying to go to biometrics. Now, if you have an iPhone and you get the Face ID, or remember you used to have your thumbprint on some of the older versions of the phone, where you could just sort of look at your phone and get in, that serves now as your two-factor authentication. But I would say, to your point, Bill, I would not do business with a company where this is optional. I would do business with a company where this is required, because that means they understand the importance of this, even though they know for their customers that it's annoying, it's inconvenient, that it causes friction. It is more important than those perceptions from their customers.
Yeah, and Donna, I notice a difference from company to company who has me jump through a lot of hoops and who doesn't. And to your point, I guess it's probably a good thing if I have to jump through a lot of hoops. And if all else fails, you call customer service, and they have, I guess, these voice recognition things these days where they can even recognize your voice. And so that's a great point.
Or the phone number you're coming through, or
I'm not actually a fan of the voice thing because I had 2 weeks of laryngitis. What do you do then? You can't access.
I said, well, normally, you should have a phone pin. They should recognize the number you're coming from. There's all these things that there are other security measures that should be in place. But I will also say too, and I just say this from the job that I did, right, for a couple of decades, if their front-end security is non-existent, I guarantee you that their back-end security is non-existent. And that's even scarier.
What's the difference between front-end and back-end?
It means what you see. Well, the back end is their enterprise security, how they're actually securing their network. You know what I mean? The cybersecurity that you don't see that's keeping their systems up and running, right? Versus what you see on the consumer level.
The front end is what we see. The back end is what we don't see that they should be taking care of. And it's kind of invisible to us. Okay. Gotcha.
Exactly. But if you don't see any security on the front end, I guarantee they didn't invest in any on the back end. That's what I'm saying. So,
you mentioned the boomer generation. I mean, I have a father-in-law that doesn't do anything with the internet. He writes checks, and that's about it. He doesn't have a smartphone. He doesn't do anything with us. How do you operate these days without tech, without the digital access? And my mother does the same thing. She still balances her checkbook. She's very afraid of these internet things, and she doesn't do any online banking.
It's tough. I'm assuming, do they have a local branch that they go in? Do they bank in person?
Yep. And it's even gotten to the point where if she's going to send a gift, she sends a cashier's check. She goes into the bank routinely.
Wow.
But she's not alone. Boomers are very paranoid of these things, and it's hard to keep up with the tech if you haven't grown up with it.
Yeah. It is tough. And well, hopefully people like that too, they'll have children or family members or anything who are also looking out for them, right? In sort of keeping them safe. And maybe if they need stuff done online, that they have a family member that they trust who can help them out with something like that. But I mean, as long as they're able to, if they can physically go into a branch where people know them, I mean, it might be okay for now. But you're right, it's tough.
I couldn't operate without digital financial access. I couldn't operate my life anymore with that. It is so important to be. I was out in Morocco and I had to do some banking, and it would have been impossible to do what I needed to do before the cell phones. GPS, for example, I don't know how I would find my way to a location anymore. I remember the days of physical maps where I can't believe I didn't have more car accidents because and it saved my marriage too. My wife didn't want to get into the navigation systems when they first came out. And I'm like, we need this because if I have to rely on you, and she's directionally challenged, if I have to rely on you for directions, we're going to get divorced.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to tell Karen that you're trash talking her, Bill.
It's funny.
Oh, she's okay. She's okay with it. She knows that that's exactly the truth. All right. So we've got other things that are important. These days, social media. There's a huge issue with that. How do attacks happen here, and how do we secure ourselves from the access that social media has to us and the influence it has over our internet security?
Yeah. Social media, to me, I feel like a lot of the issues with social media have to do with misplaced trust. Friending somebody that you don't know just because maybe you have friends who are friends with them. And you think, oh, you trust this person or this product or this service because you see them a lot, or because all of your friends use them, or again, you assume that this person is a friend of a friend when actually they're not, right? They might be a scammer. Or even one of the things that gets me also are the fun little quizzes that everybody takes, which might actually be the answers to some of your security questions. Or not even that, but a lot of the quizzes that you take, like if you were a cat, what type of cat would you be? Or whatever that might be. What those little apps are doing are trying, once you start taking those little quizzes or doing things online, they're asking you for access to your entire social media presence. And if you've been on Facebook or Instagram for a decade or 15 years or whatever, you just took this little 5-minute quiz and you've given them access to your entire profile, which is all the data that you've loaded in, all of your photos for the past 10 or 15 years, and your friends, all of your contacts, everything, all of that. That's really what they're after. All that is a huge data scrape. So not only the answers to the questions that they're asking in this fun little quiz, but it's access to your data. So to me, it's a huge privacy issue. So every time, and then you post it, and then all of your friends take it too. It's like a virus.
What do you do with social media? You make me scared to, I'm pretty heavy into Facebook, and we have a big community. And what do you personally do with social media? I mean, are you a believer and do you use it, or do you totally avoid it?
I do use it a little bit more now that I'm retired. We actually had some very strict rules being in the FBI about what we could and couldn't do. I mean, if you think about it too, we were subject to the Hatch Act. We were fully apolitical. There's things that we could post and not post, and things that we could like and not like. But also, I will not friend anyone unless I've met them in person. So even, every time you come back from a financial conference or EconoMe or whatever, like, I'm happy to friend people that I've met, but not people that they're friends with, that maybe they've met at other financial conferences. Does that make sense? I don't do secondary and tertiary connections type thing. I need to have met you and talked to you and seen you face to face before I actually friend you. And honestly, I will call those lists too. Unless we have an ongoing sort of interaction, then I don't leave people on my accounts. My accounts are very small, very exclusive. And I certainly don't do write the quizzes and things like that. And I keep them locked down too, right? Like, you can go into Facebook and look at all of your privacy settings and show like nobody can see your friends lists. You can, for your posts, only friends can see them if you want, and not friends of friends, or not everyone can see them. You can actually lock down your social media so it's not searchable globally. So I don't know if you know that or not, but your social media can actually be searchable on Google. That's an option if you don't lock it down. So that's what I do personally, just to keep it a little bit more controlled into only the area and only the people that I want to see what I'm posting. But I'm also very cynical, so I realize that's a little extreme.
And another thing, Donna, is I feel like the social media platforms, they change their terms of service and security options all the time. So for a while, I didn't even know that you could do all of that. And I guess they continually enhance them. So if you haven't done it lately, I don't know, in the last few months or the last year, just go and check it. Yeah. Like, I finally went back and checked mine, and I'm like, I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know I could do that. But they continually update that. So that's another thing that is probably helpful for people to do, review the settings. Even if you think you have it locked down, review it, because they change them all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's an excellent idea.
I think I want to purge my entire internet identity. I should cancel everything. I should start fresh. And when my ID was stolen, there was actually a service that was recommended from my financial institution that you could go into and purge a lot of your data. I don't know if it was called Delete Me or what, but they monitor all these trolls that are searching your data, and then they remove a lot of personal data from them. And I thought that made me feel better, because how do you undo this? You can lock your security down, but unless you get started early in your financial life with this, when you're 16, 18, before your internet identity becomes everywhere, how do you undo it?
Can you speak to what Bill was mentioning about what his bank recommended?
Hey, Catching Up to Fi audience. This is Bill Young telling you that we have some great sponsors here on our show these days. Jeremy Schneider, who's been on the show and is the founder of Personal Finance Club, has created a couple of great courses that he is giving to our audience at a $30 discount. Click on the link in the show notes to get this deal, and you can have the course, How to Money Like a Millionaire, which normally is $99, but you can get it for $69 using the code CUTOFI if you click on the link in our show notes. The other course that he does is called Build Wealth by Investing in Index Funds. And again, this course is only $99 normally, and it's such a great value already, but you can get $30 off and pay $69 for this course as well. Now, why not take them both? Buy his Ultimate Personal Finance Bundle, which again is normally $149, but you get $30 off the bundle if you use the code CUTOFI. Go to the show notes and find the link for these courses and get started on your personal finance journey.
Well, the United States does not have, those are called right to be forgotten laws. In fact, the European Union has those, but the US does not. So it's not actually required of people that they delete your data. That's a privacy issue that countries are just now grappling with. What kind of data should be removed or deleted from the internet? How long something should stay up? And who has a right to it? Who doesn't have a right to it? Do you, just because it's something you don't like, does that mean that it should be taken down? All of these are actually questions that countries are grappling with. Or just like, so there's I don't remember if it might be Spain, but I could be wrong. There's a case winding its way through the courts now about a politician who had something about him maybe 10 years ago that happened, and he's suing under their right to be forgotten law. And the problem now is that something that the public has a right to know about because he was a politician when it happened? Or for him as a citizen, does that fall under the right to be forgotten law? Is it something that citizens need to know because he's a public figure? Or does he have a right to his own privacy and that thing needs to be forgotten? These questions are not so easy because I want to say whatever the issue was, and I want to say it was it was like a civil court case, but it happened while he was a politician. So the courts right now are grappling with whether or not he has a right for that information to be deleted from the internet. And I honestly don't know which way it's going to go.
After talking to you today, I want to be forgotten. It's almost like I want to be reborn. Start with a new social security number, be given my cell phone when I'm an infant, and then get the education that prevents me from doing all that I did that really can't be undone. And you're doing a backdoor after the fact attempt to protect yourself after it's all out there and people sell your information and access you. It's just like you said on the front end, the individual attacks are the second leading cause of internet security issues. And I'm a target.
So, Bill, the bank that recommended that product to you, what was that? And Donna, is that something that's legit or something you would recommend? So what was the product, Bill, that your bank recommended?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it did come from the financial institution, so I did trust it. And they gave me a whole list of things that I can do. Are there resources, Donna, that you can go to online? Is the IC3 website a place that says, okay, this is your checklist of what you need to do when your ID is stolen? What are the things that you need to do, I guess, to back end it, to unwind some things that once you are compromised, how do you protect yourself? Do you have a short list of things that people can do?
For me, if you're a victim of identity theft, some of the big things to do, obviously, are locking down your credit reports and locking down your federal accounts are a big thing. Because really and truly, when you're talking about identity theft, the things that you cannot change are the things like your date of birth and your social security number. So you really, really want to lock down your IRS account and your social security account. Because if you think about it, your credit card numbers and things can be reissued. And then you can work with your individual bank to sort of lock down your accounts. In fact, you can even close those if you need to. But locking down your credit reporting, so all three credit bureaus, and then your social security account, And then obviously, like I said, but it sounds like you already have the PIN lock on your IRS, on your tax filing type thing.
You can lock down your credit report for a year, but then you can go back in with some certain ID things and lock it down for 7 years so nobody can apply for credit in your name. There's 2 levels of doing that because it will time out after a year.
Yeah.
So, Donna, is there a difference between freezing your credit reports and putting a security freeze on it, or are those the same?
I think, well, they have the same effect.
Okay.
I think unless one of them is longer, like I said, unless one of them is the 7 years. But regardless, it's up to you to unlock it.
Okay, gotcha.
That's the key. But it's huge. I actually had to freeze my accounts after I don't know if you remember the OPM data breach, where all the federal employees' information was stolen, kind of thing. So I found it to be such a hassle to do anything. I think right after that happened, I had moved and I couldn't remember, like for some reason, I don't know why, for your utilities, to turn on utilities at a new place, they need your social security number and they need to run a credit check and all that kind of stuff. And it was just what a hassle it was, right? To sort of open everything up again. So I feel for you, Bill. It's really a pain to get that done and to protect yourself after a breach.
I made it to my 50s before it happened, and you got to monitor all your accounts. You got to monitor your Social Security. You got to monitor your credit report, and those are things that you wouldn't necessarily have done before. And just let things percolate along until all of a sudden you get in the mail, we need your driver's license so that we can finally approve this new credit card. And then you go in and you're like, oh my God. And it affects your credit score when these people apply for credit in your name. So and you've got, and Credit Karma, I think, helps you do it. There are other services. You can go through the 3 credit reporting agencies, Experian,
Equifax,
and TransUnion. You can go through all those and get help monitoring your credit report. You mentioned data breaches, and that's also one of the things that we need to try and protect ourselves from. How do you do that?
Yes.
I mean, we hear about these massive things all the time, and this is incredibly important to me because of HIPAA and people's secure medical information. You hear about these things in the news, so how do we as individuals protect ourselves from data breaches?
2 things to me, huge. Don't reuse your passwords. Don't reuse your passwords. If there's anything I could tell people to do, don't reuse your passwords. That's one of the reasons that using a password manager is so important. Because if you have a company that gets hit and they suffer a data breach and your username and password is in there and it's the same password that you use for 20 other institutions or products or services, then whoever stole all that data now has access to 20 more of your products and services. So that drives me nuts. But I would also say, too, there is an argument to me for keeping your life overall, but especially your financial life, very simple. I mean, I know that travel card hacking and credit card churning and things is a big thing in the FI community. I would never do it because I don't want 20 or 25 companies to have that much data about me. I use 3 financial institutions and that's it. And I also try to use extremely high quality financial institutions. And I'm not saying that they're never going to suffer a data breach, but the chances of my data getting out there based on the 3 small high quality companies that I use versus maybe having 25 credit cards with 25 different banks or these financial institutions, or opening this card for these points or that card for this special or this card for that. My data is not out amongst, 50 different institutions or 50 different products and services. And I realize that I'm missing out on a few things. I'm missing out on some points and some bonuses and some benefits and whatnot for that. But my data is in a much, much, much smaller universe than most people would consider keeping their data. So that's a deliberate thing for me. So I only do business with, like I said, with a very, very small universe of companies. And I never, ever, ever reuse passwords. I always, always, always reuse a password. Well, I always use a password manager. So those are the 2 things that I would recommend.
And these password generators, it's like 16 digits and special characters. You can't remember them. You have to use the password manager, but you can lock them in. Can you give us sort of your top 3 list of password managers you would recommend that are high quality companies?
To me, it's not necessarily this password manager or that password manager. Again, I would do your own research and look. Like I said, I personally use LastPass. I like it. I realized that they suffered a major data breach a year or two ago. But like I said, I've read their security blogs. I've seen what they've done to recover from it, and I'm comfortable with the way they handled it, I guess. But I realized that not everybody would be, right? And here's the thing. I personally think like Dashlane, 1Password, all seem perfectly fine to me. They all seem like good password managers type thing. But I will say, I mean, when LastPass suffered their data breach, they were absolutely the industry leader. And I think once you become the industry leader, you become a target. Coming from where I came from, it's not a matter of if you're going to suffer an attack, it's a matter of when. I mean, especially if you're in the security field kind of thing, but it's how well you can defend against it, how well you can respond, how well you can recover, and how well you can move on. So I would say I wouldn't discount a company who suffered an attack, but it depends on what they do for you, the customer, how well they communicate to you what happened, what they're able to do, what the hacker is able to gain or not gain, or how much access they get into the system, and how the company is able to recover and how much the company is able to respond and actually get better after the attack. Really kind of matters. So, but to me, there are several really good password managers. Again, I would go for something US-based that you could use and not have a problem with it. Oh, but I also will say too, LastPass also comes with its own authenticator app. Mm-hmm. So I use both of those. So I use them in conjunction with each other. But I pay for the premium. I pay for the premium features in there. And I also use it for my estate planning also. Like all my transfer on death deeds, all of my travel is in there. So anything that my beneficiaries or my executors need for my estate, I don't have to worry about keeping anything up to date because everything is all in my password manager. It's actually a good way for me to, it actually helps with my estate planning as well.
So Donna, I have a quick question, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I've never used a password manager. Mm-hmm. Can you just step me through how that works? So I'm logging onto my bank account, and it prompts, I put in my ID and it prompts me for my password. Mm-hmm. What does the password manager do? And I already have it set up. Like, what does it do? Just like, what happens at that point?
So if you use a password manager, it usually it's a little extension that's already installed into your browser. So if you use Safari or Chrome or Edge or Firefox, whatever little browser you use, your password manager, once you set it up, is already installed in your browser, and it will just automatically log you in.
So what if I was on my phone?
Same thing. It's automatic.
Same thing. Okay.
Now you recommend also, say I use Safari and they allowed you to use this key app. Password managers as opposed to using the Safari way of remembering your passwords and dropping them in, because I find that it's two competing things, but one is much better than the other.
Right. Well, this is another thing that I say in my talks. Before they start using a product for security, I would like, or just for whatever reason, I just want you to ask yourself what that product is for. Right? So if you think about it, what is a password manager for? It's for security. So what is Safari for? What is your browser for?
Everything.
It's
to keep up with everything you're doing.
But it's to access the internet. That's what it's for, kind of thing. So when Apple offers you the iCloud keychain kind of thing, or Firefox, when they offer to save passwords, it is a convenience feature for them. And I will say, over time, every once in a while, then you'll read a security article that says, oh, hey, by the way, this browser was misconfigured and they were storing everybody's usernames and passwords in clear text because the browser itself was misconfigured. What's actually happening here is they're offering you a feature for convenience. So if all of your passwords, all of your usernames and passwords are stored in Safari, what are the chances that you're ever going to migrate to Chrome or Firefox? You're not, right? It's just a way of keeping you in this brand, in this product. It's a convenience feature for stickiness, which is the industry term. All they want to do is keep you in their suite of products, right? And
Well,
again, it's very convenient.
And transitioning from
sure.
the Safari keychain to LastPass is hard because you take your
It's
biometrics,
sticky.
your finger, and you put it on, it drops your
Mhm.
password in, and it's convenient, just like you said. You
Yeah.
want to keep your
Yeah.
financial life and your security life simple. 3
Yep.
financial institutions. You recommend also 3 different emails. We haven't talked about email yet.
Yeah.
We're going to all have to, after this, we're all going to use LastPass. We're all going to use Verizon. And we're not going to travel hack. And you're killing an industry out there in the FI community
So,
because travel hacking is such a thing. But now you've told everybody, I don't do it. And when an FBI agent talks, people listen.
well, I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
I just want people to understand that it's a trade-off. That's all it is. You're spreading your data a little bit farther and a little bit wider. You're trading a little bit of privacy and a little bit of security for some benefits and for some points and for this and that. But again, if you're doing your due diligence and it's worth it to you, just if it's worth it, it's worth it. But I'm just saying, just be informed, right, about what you're doing. So, and the problem is about this, I mean, to your point, Bill, it's hard to be informed about this because nobody is out there waving a flag saying, hey, I'm going to make this really easy for you, but I'm doing it because I'm taking your data. Like, that's not really most people's marketing message.
You mentioned briefly email, and you have a particular approach to that too. And I get emails, junk and otherwise, dozens of them every day that are trying to, and my email client will filter a lot of them out into junk, but then a lot of them make it through. What do we do with email so that we're more secure?
Oh, okay. So for email, for me, I like doing this. This is behavioral also. And again, okay, so technical for email, for security, you really need to institute, you need to put two-factor authentication on your email. Even if you use Gmail, which is free, you should not be able to log into your email without getting two-factor authentication. You should absolutely put two-factor authentication on your email. You can set it up in Google Security, no matter what you use, Outlook, whatever it might be, you should always have two-factor authentication on your email. And to make it a little bit harder, nobody should be able to log into your email just using a username and password. So that's one thing.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Did you know that, Bill? Do you do that? I don't.
I'm getting overwhelmed with all the things I need to do. And I did not know that you could turn this on. The problem is you have to go through there's many clicks involved here, and you have to probably search it to say, how do I turn on two-factor authentication in my email to find out where this is? Because they hide this. It's not easy to find.
Yes, it's true. But I think, so luckily, hopefully for your listeners, I sent you a little to-do list for all of this with the links. So at least for Gmail, if you put it in the show notes, right, your listeners can go download this little to-do list, and everything that we've talked about should have a link for how to do this for some of the little products that we've talked about. So there's a link in the to-do list that will take you right to Gmail and show you how to turn on your two-factor authentication.
We absolutely have this, and this is one area where everybody that listens to this is going to have to go to the show notes. There's a lot of information here, and you have made it easy for us. This is with regards to all the areas we've talked about. You go through, this is how you get started. This is how you do it. I've got a lot of work ahead of me today. No question about it.
Me too.
And you just got to, it's like that financial elephant. You got to take it one bite at a time. And I'm going to give this to-do list to my sons. And hopefully on the front end of all this, they organize this earlier than I have, because you get older, it's hard to go backwards. It's hard to undo this. As a late starter, just like with your finances, I stuck my head in the sand. And you can stick your head in the sand with this too, and just say, you know what? It's too complicated. It's too overwhelming. I can't bring myself to do this. And if there's one thing that you harp on, is use a password manager. A lot of this will come down to that. And I was fascinated to find out that you can use it for your estate planning. We talk about ICE binders where in case of emergency, and all you really need to do in some ways, so that you, when your spouse passes away, to turn off email, to turn off banking, to turn off other things and to access it, is have your login and your authenticator to your LastPass, and then everything's there. Like you said, a critical piece of estate planning, and it may be the one password that people really need.
Right, exactly. And then you don't have to worry about forgetting about an account or I have this list of passwords, but these ones are outdated, right? And I don't know what they are or whatever, right? If you keep everything in a password manager, then it'll always be right up to date and current for you, which is really nice. And I will say too, and one of the things, my emergency contact in LastPass is my executor. So what happens is they can request access to my LastPass account. And if I don't say no within 48 hours, LastPass will give them full access. So that's how it works if I die.
Do you recommend, can you share this with your spouse so that they have full access to all of this all the time so that it's seamless for a partnership?
Yeah. Absolutely. You can buy a family plan in LastPass, actually. So where everybody can have their own little section, and then you have some areas that are shared, right? And then some areas that are separate, and then, right, yeah. So you can, there's all kinds of actually different plans that you can buy in LastPass.
It seems like I need to go onto YouTube and do some LastPass tutorials to understand. That's one of the things that's
me too.
That's one of the things that's intimidating to me.
We think about the list of things. We think about the things that we think is worth spending the money on. I think financial security is one of them. Getting a password manager and some of the other things that Donna mentioned, those things are probably worth spending the money on. We're very conscientious about our money, and I think I'd proactively do it. And the return on investment for the headache, Bill, you probably agree, is worth it.
Well, my kids are going to use LastPass. I've already talked to them about it, or a password manager. I know we can't promote individual companies, and as you said, do your own due diligence. But like I said before, when an FBI agent talks, people listen. So your individual tips are good ones. And I like the fact that you talk about simplicity. Avoid convenience, keep it simple, stupid, right? You have 3 financial institutions. A lot of people have so many and so many credit cards. And it's complicated because you're just blasting out your information to the world. And if you keep it simple with high quality companies, do your research and use a password manager, you've probably done 90% of what we've talked about today, right?
Right, exactly. And again, if you use two-factor authentication on your email and everything, you've done what you can to protect your little universe of data against a password or a personal data breach, right? But you've also done what you can to minimize the chance of your data getting breached from an outside company, by only using high-quality companies who actually care about security. And again, if you use a company that forces you to use security, chances are they're secure within themselves as well. And that matters. Because again, Bill, I don't know how I don't know how your data was breached. I don't know how your identity was compromised. But if it was a company that you use, you might not ever know how that happened. Right?
No,
and how frustrating is that?
I asked them, and they said, no, we don't know. We blocked it at this certain level, and we need to tell you about it. And then they changed all my account numbers, which is also irritating. And that's happened to my son, where you need to go through, and all of a sudden, all the automatic transfers that you may have or whatever you're doing, you've got to go back and with new account numbers. So Donna, this has been awesome today. There is just so much information out there. There's a lot of information overload with this. And I may not sleep well tonight because of all the things I'm doing wrong, but I'll take your to-do list and I'll start working on it diligently. Is there anything, since we're a late starter audience, is there anything on top of mind that you might say to our audience that's important with internet security, or just in general, tips you might have, your top 3 for late starters with regards to internet security?
Well, like I said, a lot of it is you get what you pay for. I would say. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. That is true over and over and over and over again, I would say. And moving a little slowly and doing some research really matters, right? I really, I don't know, if I could tell people to do 3 things, I would say use a password manager, right? Use two-factor authentication on your email, and really, really, really choose high-quality companies. to do business with. And like you said, it matters, right? Especially when it comes to finances in your phone, I would say, because at this point, your phone is wrapped up, to your point, with your finances and with your identity, and with your personal and financial security and your privacy. All of that matters.
Well,
So, but like you said, that's good advice for anyone, not just late starters.
sure. So, Jackie, what do you think about today's conversation? This has been so valuable. I mean, we talked about scams with Paula Pant, and this is a companion piece to that, where this is how we avoid scams. We kind of did it maybe backwards, where we should have talked about, okay, how do we avoid scams? And then these are the ones that you need to avoid. But either way, I would encourage our listeners to listen to both episodes, because our security is important. We can't take it for granted. And we don't want what happened to me and have to lose a little sleep every night, because you never know when somebody's going to do something to your financial life. And you've got to monitor it closer than you would have before. So, Donna, Jackie and I really appreciate your coming on the show today. I think you've provided real value to our audience. I look forward to the response to this show. And we're going to, as I mentioned before, put your to-do list in the show notes so that people can start knocking it off. Are there any classes that you might recommend that you give, or webinars online that people might turn to for a little, other than a to-do list, information that can walk them through this?
Well, I'll tell you two things. So for any of your listeners outside of Colorado or nationally in the US, right? If you call your local FBI office, they will actually come out and give a presentation for you for free on online cyber safety kind of thing, right? And they will talk to businesses, they will talk to schools, right? And again, I mean, there are only so many of us who do things like this. But if you're interested in something in sort of a cyber literacy presentation, right? Your local FBI office will do something like that. But for anyone in Colorado, so when you listen to my FinTalk, right, about the things that you can do here, if there's anyone in Colorado who's interested in this, I will do this in person, and I will ask people to bring in their laptops and their phones, and we will go through the to-do list together if you want, and I will help people secure their devices and set up accounts and look through their browser preferences and set up a password manager. I am more than happy to do that, because I understand where you're coming from. I know it seems overwhelming and it seems like a lot of work, and I'd much rather have people do it if they know they have help, versus to look at it and decide that it's overwhelming and not do anything and leave themselves vulnerable. Right, to hackers and scammers.
I see a conference in Longmont, Colorado, in the capital of FI.
There you go.
At Mr. Money Mustache's co-workspace.
I absolutely would.
And
yes,
I
will absolutely do that.
I will fly out there for this class with my laptop. So we're going to be talking to Pete. Maybe we'll mention to him he can help others with internet security by having a in-person conference for the FI community, at least, because we don't get this right either. This is a real weak spot for people in the FI community.
Right. I've already told Pete to erase his Wi-Fi password off his whiteboard up at Money Mustache headquarters. So yes.
This was so good. I loved all the knowledge that you dropped on us, Donna. This was amazing. I definitely feel wiser, and I haven't had anything bad happen to me, but I am learning from Bill's experience. And one of the big things I do now is I make sure I consider the source. So we have just listened to a former FBI agent that knows her stuff. So take away something. You don't have to do it all in one day, but a little bit at a time, like getting that together. That is my 2024 commitment, that I'm going to secure my financial life better.
Well,
I love that. I absolutely love that.
And hopefully everybody feels the same. Donna, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate all that you've given our community. Maybe as we move towards a membership community, you consider coming on with a smaller group and walking us through virtually some of these things for just a smaller group within our community. So let's look for the to-do list and our show notes. And Donna, we hope to talk to you again soon. There's just so much more to learn in this area. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Donna.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. So our social media is Diana Falk, our editor Fritz Bassard, and show notes are done by Sarah von Sternberg. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community and we hope you love us back. If you want to support the show and what we're doing, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to virtually say thank you if you get value from our content. The link is in the show notes, or you can head over to our website at catchinguptofy.com and click on the Support the Podcast tab at the top right. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Fi. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review so that our message can reach others.
While we are financial educators, and I'm a financial professional that loves to teach, our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
We'll see you next time on Catching Up to Fi.